He told me to stop logging into my own systems, to just email him PDFs instead. 3 weeks later, I was the only person on Earth who could still log into them. My name is Raymond Hollis, 58 years old, Navy cryptologist for 14 years, senior engineer at Thornhill Industrial Cybersecurity for 26, widower, one daughter in grad school. The kind of man you forget is sitting in the meeting until something breaks. The man who told me to stop logging in was 31. Wharton MBA, Patek Philippe Aquanaut on his wrist, interim CEO since January. His last name was Thornhill. The founder was his uncle. He had never asked what I actually did. He had also never read my employment contract. He was about to find out why that was a problem. Monday, April 1st, 2024, 9:15 a.m., cold April drizzle off Lake Erie, 41 degrees, low ceiling. I was at my desk on the 12th floor of Key Tower in Cleveland. Stainless travel tumbler of black coffee next to the keyboard. Linda bought me that tumbler in 2015. No chip on it, no clever saying. A plain steel cylinder that keeps coffee hot for about 5 hours, and it is the last thing she ever wrapped for me. The all-hands Zoom opened. 180 squares. I was one of them. So was Jared Thornhill, 31, interim CEO, nephew of the man who hired me in 1998. 2-block Princeton haircut, freshly clipped, blue Patek Philippe Aquanaut on a rubber strap, unbuttoned Oxford, no tie, branded coffee mug held close to the camera the way a man holds a prop. Next to his square sat Trent Vickers, 29, sales director, cousin on the other side of the family, running the failing Cloud Shield consumer line. Jared clapped his hands into the microphone and ran through the modernization stuff: digital transformation, operationalize, lean, 3 buzzwords inside 40 seconds. Then he got specific. Ray, just send me PDFs going forward. I don't have time to log into everything. I'm the CEO, not the sysadmin. Trent laughed. On the call, 179 other squares heard it. I unmuted, said nothing, muted again, and closed the laptop. At 3 p.m. the Teams message came through, copied to an HR admin I had met exactly once. 61 words. The useful part was that I was being reclassified as Director of Documentation, reporting to Trent, same pay. My 2 direct reports were separated from the company that afternoon. I read it twice, then I typed back. Understood, I'll update the documentation. I clicked send, pulled the red binder from my lower right drawer, took the tumbler, and rode the elevator down alone. I did not drive home first. I drove the 6 minutes west along the shoreway to Edgewater Park, pulled into the empty gravel lot by the breakwater, and turned the engine off. My 2014 Chevy Silverado 1500, Summit White, 162,000 miles. The cab heater ticked as it cooled. I did not get out. I sat and watched the lake. A freighter was moving past the mouth of the Cuyahoga, low in the water, westbound. I counted the minutes by the change in the freighter's angle against the brake wall. 7. I set the red binder on the passenger seat, Hollis across the spine, in my own block letters from 2011. I had not opened it since 2013. I knew what was in it. Then I drove home. Interstate 71 South, radio off. I grew up in Mansfield, Ohio, son of a man who ran a drill press at Empire Reeves Steel until it closed. Navy, 1984 through 1998, 2 tours at an NSA station in Georgia, Fleet Cyber Command in between, first-class petty officer by the end. I joined Thornhill 8 weeks after discharge. Linda was a high school librarian for Mansfield City Schools for 22 years. She died in October 2019, heart failure, diagnosed in June, gone before Halloween. Abby is 24 and finishing her master's in bioinformatics at Case Western in Cleveland. Widower, 1 kid, 1 mortgage, 1 truck, 1 binder. A man who answers every email in under 24 hours. Thornhill Industrial Cybersecurity held 40 municipal utility clients across Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Indiana, and Western New York. Combined annual contract value, $14.2 million. Every one of those contracts carried Federal Grid Security certification, which is the rule book the government uses to decide who is allowed to touch the control systems that run a utility's pumps, breakers, and water treatment. We were also on Homeland Security's short list of approved cybersecurity vendors. I held 3 personal certifications, one for industrial control systems, one for information security, one for the International Safety Standard Utilities Live and Die By. All 3 take years. None of them can be faked. And I was the named responsible technical principal on every one of those 40 federal filings. Not the company, the person, me. Jared did not know that. Trent did not know that. In all fairness, they had never asked. Arthur Thornhill was 58 when I met him. Same age I am now, which was a thing I thought about the day they fired me. Coast Guard in the 60s. He shook my hand at a hiring event at Great Lakes Naval Station, asked me what I did on ships, asked me if I could explain a packet capture to a city manager, and hired me before I finished my second cup of coffee. By 2011, I was a senior principal engineer, and Arthur had put me on every federal filing we had. That is when Doug Farrell slid a piece of paper across a diner table in Westlake, Ohio. Doug is a Marine, not Navy. We met in 2001 at a veterans legal aid clinic in Lakewood. He runs Farrell and Boyd in Cleveland, federal contracts and labor. He drafted the rider at his own desk on a Saturday, not a minute of it billed to Thornhill. If you're the name on the federal filings, Ray, you protect the name, not the firm. The name. 1 page. Addendum B. Clause 4.2 of my employment agreement amendment, 30-day reversion window on any reassignment or termination of the named principal. Arthur signed. I signed, notarized in Cuyahoga County on March 14, 2011. Nobody ever read it again. 2 years later, in 2013, I formed a Delaware LLC called Hollis Industrial Security. Arthur gave written blessing on Thornhill letterhead, 2 paragraphs. In his own hand. Dormant entity, registered agent paid every year, professional liability carrier renewed for 11 straight years. I kept it alive the way you keep a pilot light on. By the time Jared walked in as Chief Strategy Officer in October 2022, and definitely by the time he was named Interim CEO in January 2024, the trap was already built. It had been built for 13 years. Nobody had checked. Monday at 4:30 p.m., while I was still driving south on Interstate 71, Jared published a LinkedIn post, quote, "Proud to lead Thornhill into a modernized, efficient future, #digital transformation," end quote. Trent reshared it with the word "finally" in front of it. Tuesday morning around 9, Thornhill's outside counsel, a careful man named Harold Mercer, emailed Jared. The email flagged the 2011 rider, gave the Addendum B Clause 4.2 citation, and recommended Jared schedule a call before publishing any further announcements. Jared replied with 2 words, "Handle it." At noon that Tuesday, in his own office on the 15th floor, Jared told Trent about me. Dale Sutton, who had been dispatching for Thornhill for 22 years, who was my office mate in my early years, walked past the open door. He's 58 with a daughter in grad school. He's not going anywhere. If you have ever been told you are not ready by someone who couldn't do your job for 5 minutes, you already know where this goes. Like and subscribe. For the record, and only for you, the number on Abby's program is $87,400, and the mortgage in Mansfield is $1,840 a month on the house Linda picked out in 1998. Jared was right about the shape of my life. He was wrong about one small thing. He thought the shape was a cage. I should tell you what it cost, because the part that made Jared wrong about me was not the rider. It was what I had already paid. In the fall of 2019, Linda was in hospice in our bedroom in Mansfield. The cardiologist had given us 4 months in June. We made it to late October. I ran federal grid security audit remediation on a laptop on the kitchen counter while she slept, because Cincinnati had a recertification window that did not care about my wife. 2 cities, 1 woman, 3 a.m. decisions. I did not miss a deadline. She died on a Thursday. I buried her on a Sunday. I was back on a call Monday morning at 7 because Lima, Ohio was trying to bring a pump station online, and there was no one else on the filing. In May 2018, Abby walked across a stage in the Mansfield Senior High gymnasium in a cap with a yellow tassel. I was in Toledo. A ransomware crew out of Eastern Europe had locked a water treatment plant's Allen Bradley stack, and I was the named principal on the filing. That meant I was the one who drove up. I watched her speech on a phone propped against a vending machine in the plant control room at 4:50 p.m. on a Saturday. She did not cry. She thanked her mother in past tense and her father in future tense, and I did not correct the sentence on the phone because there was no one to correct it to. Abby Abby does not hold grudges. She sent me a photo. I taped it to my monitor. It is still there. That was what Jared did not know he was buying when he wrote the team's DM. He thought he was paying for a director of documentation. He was paying for a man who had already paid full price. I did not do anything Monday night. I did not do anything Tuesday during the day. I sat at the kitchen table in Mansfield with the red binder closed in front of me and Linda's photograph on the sill above the sink, looking out at a maple tree she planted the year Abby was born. The branches were half out in pale green. Tuesday around 6 p.m., Abby drove down from Cleveland with a blue Le Creuset pot of chili and the cornbread her mother used to make, the one with creamed corn baked through it. She did not ask me what had happened. She set the pot on the stove, turned the burner to low, sat across from me at the table, and ate out of a bowl she had eaten out of since she was 8. We talked about her thesis defense in May. We talked about a squirrel that had gotten into the attic of her apartment building in Cleveland Heights. We talked about the weather in Mansfield, which was too cold for the tomatoes she wanted to put in the ground. We did not talk about Jared. We did not talk about Thornhill. When she left a little after 9, she kissed the top of my head. "I love you, Dad. Call me tomorrow." "I will." I did not call her the next day. She was not expecting me to. 48 hours. That was what I gave myself. 48 hours to sit still, to let the people who thought they knew my shape keep thinking they did, and to let the machinery they had already started running do what it was going to do. They had pulled the pin. I just had not told them yet. The red binder sat on the kitchen table with Linda's photograph 12 feet away. Everything I needed was inside both of those things. All I had to do was wait for the right hour and open them. 1,200 miles south, in a ground-floor condo in Naples, Florida, Florence was reading Jared's post aloud to Arthur Thornhill. Arthur was 84, quilt over his legs, the gulf going dark outside the sliding door. Florence had worked for him for 6 years. Part of her evening routine was reading the trade press out loud because Arthur's eyes could no longer track small screens. She had added LinkedIn 3 months earlier, after Jared was named interim CEO, because Arthur wanted to know what his nephew was telling the world. She read the post, proud to lead Thornhill into a modernized, efficient future. #digital transformation. Then Trent's reshare. Finally, Arthur put his hand on the table, palm down, held it there. He asked Florence to read what Ray Hollis's title was on the company website. She pulled it up. Director of Documentation. Arthur made a sound I was told about later. Not a word, not a cry, a breath going out. He was too weak to walk to the phone. He asked Florence to get his daughter on the line. Margaret Thornhill Keene picked up in Columbus at 10:20 p.m. Arthur told her what Florence had read. He asked her to open the second drawer of his old roll-top in the guest room, find the Rolodex card with my name on it and call me. The Rolodex card had my Mansfield landline on it. I had listed it on his card in 2005. Arthur had added 2 dots in blue pen next to the number the next year. He never told me why. Margaret called at 11:15 p.m. Tuesday. The phone rang twice. I picked up. It was a landline, the kind of ring I had not heard after 10 at night in about a decade. "Ray, this is Margaret Thornhill, Dad's daughter. He saw the post. He wants to know what happened," I told her. Short sentences. Monday's Zoom, the PDF's line, the 3 p.m. Teams message, the rider, the 30-day reversion. I told her the certification was in my name, not the company's. I told her about the LLC in Delaware. I told her I had not done anything yet, and I was calling Doug Farrell in the morning. Margaret was quiet for maybe 15 seconds. Then she said, "Dad isn't going to last long, Ray. He wants you to do what you need to do." "I understand. He also wants me in the boardroom Thursday. Then bring Doug," she said. "I will." I hung up. It was 11:17 p.m. I opened the binder. The rider was on top, in the plastic sleeve I had put it in 13 years ago. The page was still crisp. The notary stamp was a faint purple circle, perfectly dry. It said exactly what I remembered it saying. Under it was the Homeland Security approved vendor listing for Thornhill Industrial Cybersecurity. My name, my credential numbers, my Federal Grid Security Principal designation. The listing is public. Nobody had ever looked. Under that was Arthur's written blessing for Hollis Industrial Security, LLC. 2 paragraphs, Thornhill letterhead, March of 2013. The ink was the same blue he had used all his life. I drafted the email at the kitchen table. I copied Doug Farrell on it. 1 paragraph, 7 sentences. It stated that effective immediately, under Addendum B, Clause 4.2 of my 2011 Employment Agreement Amendment, my federal grid security principal status was withdrawing from Thornhill Industrial Cybersecurity on a 30-day clock. It stated that Hollis Industrial Security LLC would be going live Wednesday as a licensed industrial control systems vendor under my federal principal designation. It attached scans of the rider, the blessing, and the Homeland Security listing. I read it twice for Linda and sent it at 11:47 p.m. Doug called at 6:45 the next morning, Wednesday, from a gas station off Interstate 71. Ray, I'm on the road to the office. I'll have the principal withdrawal notice with Homeland Security filed before lunch. I want you in my conference room at 8:30 to sign. I'll be there at 8:15. By 10:41 a.m. Wednesday, Doug had filed the formal federal notice through the Attorney of Record channel. By 11 a.m., Hollis Industrial Security LLC had a live one-page website, a phone number routed to my cell, and my full credential stack posted under Federal Grid Security Principal and Homeland Security approved vendor candidate. 11 years of paid insurance premiums and the pilot light court first try. Thornhill did not know any of this yet. Harold Mercer had warned them Tuesday morning. Jared had replied with 2 words and gone back to his calendar. Mercer was a careful man. I learned later he had already started a file. At 2 p.m. Wednesday afternoon, an email Dale Sutton was never supposed to see landed in his inbox. Jared had replied all to a thread he had going with Trent. The distribution list was a legacy internal group called Ops 12, everyone on the 12th floor operations team, created in 2004 and never cleaned up after Trent's reorg. Dale had been on it since the day it was created, so had 11 other long-tenured people nobody on the executive floor remembered existed. The thread ran 12 messages. Trent had written most of them. His language was not polite. Quote, "This is your mess, Jared. I told you not to touch Hollis. I said it in January. I said it in March. Any idiot could have pulled his file." End quote. Further down the same thread, Trent again. Quote, "He is the principal of record on 40 federal filings. They are in his name. They have always been in his name. Uncle Arthur set it up that way." End quote. Dale read the thread twice. He saved the whole thing as a PDF through the print-to-file option in his mail client. He walked downstairs, across the lobby, out onto East 9th, and over to a bench next to the Cleveland Public Library, where he emailed the PDF and a 1-paragraph resignation letter to my personal Gmail. It was 2:11 p.m. I read it at a desk in Doug's office. Doug read it over my shoulder while he was on a second call. When he finished, he said one word: Thursday. Thursday morning, April 4th, 54 degrees, wind off the lake, sharp sun. Arthur flew up from Fort Myers on a private medical flight. A nurse wheeled him across the Key Tower lobby at 9:40. He was wearing a suit I had last seen on him at Linda's funeral. He had lost 30 pounds since. The 14th floor boardroom was built for 20 and had 7 directors on the speaker array. Arthur at the head of the table, Margaret to his right, Harold Mercer 2 chairs down with a brown folder. Jared at the opposite end, branded coffee cup in front of him. Trent 2 seats away, facing a laptop. I sat along the wall with Doug Farrell. Doug had a red folder. He does not carry red folders by accident. Jared opened with a transition plan. He ran through slides. New CEO cadence, new leadership principles, new operating rhythm. He had a slide titled Right-Sized for What's Next. He used the word operationalize 4 times in 7 minutes. He mentioned my name once as director of documentation and moved on. Arthur coughed twice quietly. He held up one finger. Jared stopped talking. Arthur said, "Doug, read the rider." Doug Farrell stood up. He was wearing a grey suit and a Marine Corps veteran's lapel pin the size of a grain of rice. He opened the red folder. He read Addendum B, Clause 4.2 aloud, slowly, the way a man reads a name at a funeral. 7 sentences, 30-day reversion window, named principal portability, bilateral signature with notary, March 14th. 2011. He read my name, Raymond E. Hollis. He read Arthur's name, Arthur L. Thornhill. He put the folder down. Harold Mercer opened his brown folder 3 seconds later, as if he had been waiting all week. He read one sentence out of his file. I emailed this clause citation to interim CEO Jared Thornhill at 8:53 a.m. Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024, and received a two-word response at 9:11. One of the directors on the phone line, a woman I had never met who served on 3 utility boards, said, "What 2 words?" Harold Mercer said, "Handle it." The silence in the boardroom was the kind of silence that has a sound, which is the low hum of the air conditioning on the 14th floor of Key Tower. Jared looked at Trent. Trent was not looking at Jared. Trent was looking at a legal pad and drawing a vertical line on it. Doug turned a page in the red folder. He started to read the Hollis Industrial Security LLC formation documents, including Arthur's written blessing on Thornhill letterhead. Jared held up a hand. "Wait, what do you mean the certification is in his name? It's our listing." Doug did not answer Jared. Doug looked at Arthur. Arthur did not answer either. I answered. I had said nothing in the room up to that point. I was along the wall. The directors on the speaker array had never heard my voice before. "The certification is in my name. It has been since 2011. Homeland Security is being notified today." That was 22 words. It was the most I had said in any meeting in a year. Jared said, "You can't just..." Arthur coughed again, one finger raised. Arthur's voice was barely above the hum of the room. "Jared, sit down." Jared sat down. Doug looked at his watch. So did Harold Mercer. So did Margaret. It was 10:31 a.m. The federal notice had been filed Wednesday at 10:41 a.m. 24 hours, give or take, was the usual federal turnaround for a principal unavailable delisting. Nobody said it out loud. Nobody had to. Everyone in the room who had ever read a federal compliance rulebook was watching the same clock. Trent set the pencil down very carefully, like he was afraid of the sound. The speakerphone hissed. The woman director who had asked about the 2 words said, "Is there a replacement principal on file?" Jared opened his mouth. He did not have an answer. Somewhere between Key Tower and the Federal Cyber Agency's office in Arlington, Virginia, a queue was moving. At 2:14 p.m. that Thursday afternoon, a program in Arlington, Virginia, executed the entry Doug Farrell had filed at 10:41 a.m. Wednesday. Homeland Security removed Thornhill Industrial Cybersecurity from its approved vendor list for industrial control systems. The listing page cached for about 12 minutes before the public link went dead. Every municipal utilities compliance office inside the United States that subscribed to the agency's weekly digest got the delisting notice in their Friday morning inbox. 3 of them did not wait for Friday. Toledo called Thornhill's main line at 3:07 p.m. Thursday, Akron at 3:40, Cincinnati at 4:55. Each one issued a 30-day termination notice on the compliance contract and a letter of intent to solicit bids from a new principal of record. By 5 p.m. Thursday, Thornhill Industrial Cybersecurity had lost its federal vendor status and 3 of its 40 utilities, and the sun had not yet set over the lake. Jared's LinkedIn post was still up while this happened. I checked, proud to lead Thornhill into a modernized, efficient future. #digital transformation. 147 comments, the newer ones not congratulatory. By the end of the weekend, the post was gone, and so was the account. By 5 p.m. Thursday, my phone had rung 4 times. I did not answer any of them. I was on the porch of the Mansfield house with the tumbler. Dale Sutton answered mine. Dale had become, in the span of about 30 hours, the general manager of a company that barely existed. I wrote him a 1-paragraph job offer Wednesday night and emailed it at 11:22 p.m. He accepted before 7 a.m. Thursday. His tenure at Hollis Industrial Security LLC began the hour Thornhill delisted. His first desk was a folding table in his own basement in Palmer. The first utility he took a call from at Hollis was Cincinnati's at 5:20 p.m. Thursday. Their compliance officer, a woman I had known for 9 years, said 4 words to Dale. "Put Ray on, please." I took the call at the kitchen counter in Mansfield. She said 3 sentences. She named her utility. She named her deadline. She asked if I could hold the principal role under a new contract. I said yes. I said it in 1 word. By the end of the following Tuesday, April 9th, Day 5 of the 30-day reversion clock, 8 utilities had signed letters of engagement with Hollis Industrial Security. By the following Wednesday, April 17th, Day 15, 14. By Thursday, Day 17, 18 of 40. The combined annual revenue those 18 contracts carried was $6.4 million. That number did not include the 3 utilities already in bid phase. Doug called it the first round. He said it the way a man who has been doing federal work for 30 years says anything. That's the first round, Ray. The second round is the rest. I did not want the rest. 18 was enough. 18 was what a man with 1 truck and 1 daughter can run without missing another graduation. Doug understood. He did not bring it up again. Day 17, April 18th. The Thornhill board reconvened in the same 14th floor boardroom. Arthur was not there in person. He was on the speaker array from Naples. Margaret was in the room as his proxy. Jared walked into the meeting wearing the same unbuttoned Oxford he had worn on the Zoom 17 days earlier, with a different watch. He had been told to come. He had not been told what the agenda was. The directors had. Margaret had drafted it. The first motion was the removal of Jared Thornhill as interim CEO by cause. It passed 6-0. Arthur abstained. The directors did him the courtesy of not asking him to vote against his sister's child out loud. The second motion was the termination of Trent Vickers for willful misrepresentation of a federal compliance matter. The Dale Sutton email thread had been attached to the board packet in PDF form Wednesday night under attorney-client privilege. Every director had read it. The motion passed 6-0. Arthur abstained again. The third motion was the immediate wind-down of Cloud Shield, the consumer line Trent had defended for 4 years. The line's cumulative operating loss as of that morning was $4.1 million. It passed 6-0. Arthur abstained a third time, and the nurse beside him in Naples offered him water. Jared packed his office under the supervision of a building security officer I had said good morning to since 2006. He took the Patek Philippe Aquanaut, a Wharton diploma, and a set of branded coffee mugs. The 2-block Princeton haircut he had worn on the Zoom was a week overdue. Nobody was there to watch him leave. Trent left the same afternoon. I heard from a source I will not name that he left the keys to the Porsche on the sales floor reception desk, walked out through the lobby without stopping, and took a rideshare to the airport. He was back in Florida by dark. His mother had told him to come home. Thornhill ran for 5 more months on a provisional replacement principal the board hired out of Pittsburgh at a rate I will not state because it was offensive. He was competent. He was not me. 21 of the remaining 22 utilities declined to renew. 6 months later, on a Tuesday in late October, Meridian Grid Defense of Charlotte, North Carolina, acquired what was left of Thornhill Industrial Cybersecurity for $38 million. The internal valuation 12 months before had been $118 million, 32 cents on the dollar. The brand was dissolved inside of a quarter. The 12th floor offices at Key Tower were subleased to a logistics firm in January. The Thornhill sign came down from the lobby directory on a Thursday morning, and I happened to be in the building for a meeting with Doug, and I stopped and watched a maintenance man unscrew it with a cordless drill. He did it in less than a minute. He did not know what he was taking down. I did not gloat. There was no one to gloat to. Saturday, May 18th, 2024, clear morning, 68 degrees, Severance Hall on East Boulevard, Cleveland, the one Arthur's wife used to love for the Cleveland Orchestra Saturday matinees. Abby Hollis walked across the stage at 10:48 a.m. in a black robe with a light blue hood for bioinformatics. She had thanked her mother and her father both in the present tense in the program she sent me the night before. I had read it 3 times at the kitchen table with the lamp on. She shook the dean's hand. She turned and found my face in the 4th row of the second balcony and nodded 1 time, just once, the way her mother used to nod when she was telling me without speaking that she was proud. I had left the stainless travel tumbler in the Silverado in the lot behind the Cleveland Institute of Music. I did not need it. I had my phone in my pocket, and it was turned off for the first time since 2020, which was 4 years, give or take a week. The red binder was on the shelf above my desk in Mansfield next to Linda's photograph, no longer needed in the truck. I took Abby and her advisor out for lunch at a place on Larchmere, a small French spot her mother had taken her to on her 13th birthday, and that neither of us had been back to since. I had a club sandwich. Abby had a salad with pears and blue cheese. Her advisor, a woman from Case Western's bioinformatics department, told me stories about what Abby had been like in lab, and I laughed twice at things Linda would have laughed at first. I paid the check with a card that listed Hollis Industrial Security LLC as the issuer. I did not think about that when I signed the slip. I thought about the maple tree in Mansfield and how the creamed cornbread was still better than the bread they brought at the restaurant. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday, a handwritten envelope arrived at the Mansfield house. No return address. The handwriting was Arthur's, shakier than I remembered, but his. Inside was a single sheet of Thornhill letterhead, still the old stationery from the 90s. 2 sentences. You were the best hire I ever made, Ray. I'm sorry I did not see what Jared was doing in time. That was it. No signature block, no date. Just his initials, ALT, in the lower right corner, the way he used to initial a memo in 2001. I read it twice. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I walked upstairs, took down a frame from the hallway that had held a photograph of Linda at 29, standing on a beach in North Carolina, and slid Arthur's letter behind the picture. Then I put the frame back on the wall. The letter sits behind Linda now, both of them, in the one frame just above the hall light. Arthur died in July. I went to the service in Naples. Margaret read a passage from a book about small-town electric utilities that Arthur had given her when she made partner. I did not speak. Nobody asked me to. People ask me, when they hear the outline of this story, if I gave a speech, if I confronted Jared, if I had a line ready for the boardroom, a line for the exit, a line for the press. I did not. What I had was a binder, a rider, an LLC somebody had signed a blessing for in blue ink 13 years earlier, and a daughter who deserved to walk across a stage with her father in the seats. That was all I had ever needed. They told me to email the PDFs, so I emailed a resignation instead, and the federal government took the logins with me. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments about the moment you realized the person across the table had no idea who they were dealing with. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and ring the notification bell for more stories like this one. There is another one coming next week, a retired shift supervisor, a deal nobody should have signed, and a phone call from a harbor pilot at 3 in the morning. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.